All right, we're good to go. Hey, we're with Scott Gaskill in Iowa, Harvest City Church,
How you
and
doing?
Byron Cogdell with Identity Daytona. These are a
Oh,
couple of my FA brothers. So we went to a thing called Fellowship Associates together a few years ago. Fellowship Associates is kind of like, I'd love to know how you guys describe it. It's kind of like a finishing school slash boot camp slash kind of like a Dr. Phil all rolled into one.
Dr. Phil. Dude, I don't know about that. I
You
didn't
know,
have any kind of Oprah experience.
you didn't, but we all kind of had an Oprah experience. Describe it for me, Scott. What do you think? What do you think FA was like?
Oh man. First word that came to my mind was brotherhood.
Mm,
For sure it's a training program, right? They brought us together to prepare church planners, but the best thing that came out of it is the relationships that I have right here, and with the rest of those guys. And so I think first and foremost, I think of a brotherhood. Second thing that I think it did was a lot of training. When I think about training, I think about like sitting in a room, having someone talk at you, that kind of thing. But that's just not what FA was, right? Like so many times they put us in a room with people that we just needed to experience that person and their spirit and how that was going to affect us. And so, the other thing is it was just a lot of experiences lumped together that made me more self-aware, that helped me make me a better man, like those kind of things. Not necessarily a better church planner, but a better leader, a better man. And then because of that, maybe a better church planner.
yeah.
I mean, there's probably some guys you didn't necessarily get along with or like right away. Would you say that's true, Scott?
I'd say there's probably a number of guys that didn't get along with me right away. Let's be honest. But yeah, man, I mean, I cut it up with you guys pretty quick. That was a bonus.
Yeah.
Scott's so I mean you for those of you that are listening, Scott lives in Iowa, so very different. And so
Very different, he says.
when you
Come on.
merge guys from Iowa and Florida and California, and then you got Tennessee and
Detroit, inner city Detroit, man.
yeah, and you mix.
Tyler told me I was lily white the first time he met me. Lily white.
That's what we need more of. We need more of the commingling of the cultures. You know what I mean? The
Yeah,
first
we
time I met
definitely need that.
Tyler, first time I met Tyler, he was wearing that shirt, Detroit versus everybody. And I told him, you'll never get clean water without attitude. That was the very first thing I ever said to him. Terrible thing to say to somebody, especially a guy looking like Tyler.
Bro.
He looks like Suge Knight.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, this guy could kill me after this. I don't know what he's gonna
Yeah,
do.
legit. Tyler's like talking about this McDonald's near him that's called Murder Mac every time we have a conversation, man. It scared me every time we talk.
Yeah, I got to have him on. But hey, Byron, describe FA, man. What was the experience like for you?
Man, everybody always says like finishing school, and I didn't feel like that. Like I didn't feel like it was finishing school at all. Like I felt like it was, if anything, like the kickoff to everything. And they're warning you about stuff that you're gonna see. They're prepping you, and most importantly, prepping your heart, right? So, I'm sitting there
Yeah.
thinking like, all right, I'm gonna learn every little tidbit there is about church planting outside of planting missional churches by Ed Stetzer. Or something by Aubrey Malphurs, but no, it wasn't that at all. It was them like caring for our hearts and putting us next to other guys who were wanting to do similar things. And at the end of it, I even asked myself, like, man, how much did I learn about the X's and O's, opposed to like how much I learned about myself and how I get along with other people and all that stuff. So I loved it, man. I mean, I pledged a fraternity when I was in college, so it felt very much like that outside of, without all of the foolishness. And I felt like it kind of brought us together, made us a brotherhood. So that's what I loved about it
Yeah,
so much.
yeah, it did bring that brotherhood aspect too, because I really feel like I don't know if I would have been ready to plant a church now without going through FA. I don't even know what I would have done. I might have quit by now. Like I'm almost pretty sure I would have just quit, like, and done something else. Because I'm like a serial starter, but that means if you're a serial starter, you either fail all the time or you quit.
Yeah.
And I always like quits. I feel like I might have quit by now.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I got a brother that another guy from FA planted in Iowa, but in Podunk, man, like in rural Iowa. Y'all think I'm in Podunk. He lives in a town that has like 500, 1,000 people, all right? and he launched months before COVID-19. And dude, his church is growing in the midst of this thing. It's the only church within a 30-mile radius of him that's doing a online service right now, and they're growing like crazy. And I think, like, apart from FA, right, and the preparation that God's done, like, dudes like that would just wash out in this season, you know? So it's cool how it prepares you well, but not necessarily in X's and O's like Byron said. I love that.
Yeah. And what's cool is, like, the best, I believe, and this is kind of like how I learned, the best way to learn is like being next to somebody. It's like, I mean, Eddie, you probably experienced this when you're doing drills and you got a guy next to you, you know, like that guy's going to amp you up a little bit more to go a little bit harder. And I think that was one of the best parts of it. Like, I'm getting to see what you guys are doing. I'm getting to see mistakes. I'm getting to see, you know, great things that y'all are doing. And it's like a spectrum. So you got guys like Neek and Tyler who are like way ahead. And then guys like y'all who are like right in the middle of it. And then guys like me who are like right at the beginning, and maybe even Jeremy who are right at the beginning. So we get to share experiences and also like match each other's intensity in some sort of way, and exchange ideas. Because a lot of times, man, y'all, I mean, chime in on this if you can, but like, if you know, feel like you're called to plant a church and you are like trying to get all this information, you go on YouTube, you're seeing what other churches are doing, what other pastors are doing, but you're not getting behind the scenes. Like, you're not seeing, you know, what it was like for that pastor's wife, or what it was like for that core team, or that time that nobody showed up to a vision gathering, you know. But when we're together, like, you know, all of us are together, we're getting to share those things, and it's helping us build, you know, as each of us are on our own path. So I don't think you could pay for an experience like that.
Yeah, amen.
No, thanks for using that football analogy, by the way. I really understand now what you're trying to say. No, I'm just kidding. But you're right. No, it's true. You being next to people and getting to see the experiences of them is way different. It's all theory. By the way, you mentioned church planting videos. I'm sure you did your fair share of like watching like really bad church planting promo videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
Do you care do you got any favorites, Scott?
Dude, I don't watch videos. That's what I was just going to say, man, is that I think actually connecting with y'all like makes it so I can stay away from most of that trash, because honestly, like, each of y'all has like so many great strengths. Like Jeremy's like a wordsmith. So anytime Jeremy puts something out, I'm reading that joint and copy and pasting it into my stuff, you know?
Jeremy's at one of the guys, Fellowship Associates, one of our other brothers.
Yeah. Or like Byron is like a boss on social media, and we all know he's so good at graphic design and stuff like that. And so it's like, I just give it to my people and I tell them to aspire to be like Byron, you know? So I stay away from the videos, dude, thanks to you guys.
Byron, come on, man. I know you watched a bunch of bad ones. Just give me one, bro.
I'm not going to call out who.
You don't tell me who it is.
Actually, it's one that you told me about, like, in the city near you, and this really, really big church that's, I guess, trying to start in your city, and they're like on top of a hill or something, or a mountain, like gazing down.
He knows now.
Yeah, I mean, I saw plenty of things like that, man. I mean, we would, especially in Florida, man, we get so many church planters like coming from all over the world saying like, God has sent me to like Miami Beach. And you're like, okay. And they're like standing on the beach and like,
I wish God would send me to Miami Beach.
I know, right? Me too. I'm thinking about like quitting this and like joining somebody else's team in Miami.
I know, or San Diego.
No, in Iowa City, bro. In Iowa City, that's where you got to join the team, man.
So when you start a church plant, it's pretty common, right, for people to start, like, they create these little videos that they share around, and they say, hey, this is what we're doing, cast vision video. One of the worst things you can probably do is like denigrate the city that you're going to, and
my God,
and then
the most lost city in the whole region.
Yeah,
there's so many lost people here, and the Lord needs to be represented.
There was one, so when you mentioned the guy standing on the hill, he was like looking down, and he's like, this place is basically terrible, and I'm coming to change it. We're bringing the light, and we're going to fix this entire city.
Wow.
That's like that's the best way to endear yourself to natives in the cities. When they see, they go, you know what? I am a dark human. I do need this hipster to come save me with his hat.
Yeah. Let's bring him in, man. I need that hipster. A cool thing when we're thinking about our cities, bro, is that I think it was in the Times briefing last week. They're lifting up your city in San Francisco and saying these people locked down on time and they did it right and it's cut down the coronavirus, dude. Like those are the things you should be championing if you're, like if you're a man of the city,
That is really interesting that San Francisco finally did something right. It's a great city. It's beautiful. I love the place, but we do a lot of weird stuff over here, and we're at the front end of culture. So it's kind of like, you get the worst of everything because you're first. It just feels like, and everyone else gets to look at your mistakes and go, okay, I'm gonna tweak those things. But the coronavirus lockdown, like our San Francisco was a ghost town from like the day Rudy Gobert decided to give everybody coronavirus.
Rudy, man,
the whole city shut down like the next day, and it's been shut down ever since. And it's been pretty. And we even had a nursing home outbreak, and they just like squashed it. Nuts, right? I mean, what's been happening in y'all cities? I mean, what's it been like?
Well, Florida is Florida. I mean, many headlines start with Florida man, and the entire state can sometimes be incompetent.
That reminds me, how's your drive-in services going?
Driving? I'm not doing driving.
I'm just messing with you.
But there are plenty of people who are doing it. Matter of fact, there was some churches in town, the pastor like preached from the roof. So it was pretty interesting. But yeah, man, it's been interesting here because there are a lot of people who are like protesting and want to get back to regular, and things are just not going to be that way for a long time. So we've kind of been slow to respond to certain things, and like the beaches are back open, so there are plenty of people back on beaches, and I don't think tourism has slowed down quite a bit because the hotels have slowed down and they've kind of shut down rather. But for the most part, like VRBOs and all of the like one night stay places are still available. So there's still a lot of tourism going as well. So, I mean, it kind of like brings a lot of concern for a lot of us, especially a lot of locals, because, I don't see us taking the precautions we need to take, but we're praying that, things work out well by God's grace. And luckily we haven't seen that much of an outbreak here in my particular county or my particular city. We've seen kind of like what you said, actually 2 nursing homes had outbreaks in the last few weeks. And I think 60% of all the cases came from 2 nursing homes.
Crazy.
So,
wow.
Although, we are definitely like praying for those people and we're wanting them to recover, it kind of puts your heart in, a different section because you kind of know it's not just like everywhere at this point. But yeah, that's kind of where we are and constantly like tracking how things are going.
You guys I feel like you're right. Florida is like the king of like some weird redneck doing something crazy. So was it in Florida with the guy who didn't shut his service down and they just had a church anyway and he got arrested?
Yeah.
That was you guys, right?
Tampa. Yeah, Tampa, man. It's a lot of churches like that. Like he was just the one who got kind of singled out for it. But it's been quite a few churches. Like, I mean, on my block, we have 40 something churches just within a 3-mile radius. And I'd say probably 50 to 60% of them are still having service every Sunday. So.
Wow.
Are
That's
you serious?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So why aren't you guys breaking out with coronavirus? Is it because the media lied to us, or what's happening?
Yeah, I you know what? I wouldn't even be able to explain that. We've seen very few cases in the particular area of town I'm in, which is kind of the low income area of town. The most of the cases we've seen have been on the west side of the county, where there are more people who are more affluent, who travel more, who are going back and forth. And then Daytona has a big older community. So that's where we're seeing a lot of cases.
That's crazy.
Most of the people who are in my neighborhood don't leave my neighborhood. So unless it kind of swarms into the neighborhood, I don't see there being a big outbreak in the neighborhood. So that people are using that to say, no, as long as we are within this block or these few blocks, then, we could live life as regular.
And that's all. Florida's also the place where that dude became a meme that was like on spring break, the bro. And he was like, I don't care. It's whatever, man. Whatever happens, happens. That guy. That's your brother. Man,
He was about 400 miles away from me, but
it's all I know is I have to get lumped in with every person in LA every time they do anything. So you get to be lumped in with Miami, all the Cubans
Wow.
and all that.
yeah.
Wayne Wade, all of it. It's all you. So what's going on then? Is the media not giving us the truth? Like, we're hitting this realization where I was thinking, okay, they tell us the lockdown. We get this impression that if we leave our houses, we're going to somehow die. Not only are we going to get coronavirus, but we're going to die of coronavirus if we leave our houses. But then there are places like Georgia just opened, like they just opened up gyms and all sorts of things. And then you've got places like Florida that are opening beaches and people are hanging out. So what's your thought? What's your opinion? Is the media lying to us, or are we blowing this out of proportion?
I'll let Scott, you tackle that first.
Don't be scared.
Man, dude, I don't know. I feel like our community is like the opposite. Our response has been the opposite. I live in a incredibly like well-versed, like affluent population that revolves around the medical community. Like the center of Iowa City is the University of Iowa hospitals and clinics. And so like here, everybody's on lockdown, like we don't have any of that stuff going on. And so that's the first I'm hearing of it, man. So like I'm interested to hear what Byron thinks, because I'm like, really, I didn't even know people were doing church still anywhere in America, you know?
Man, it's the South, man. It's the South. I just got to be honest, man. I grew up in the South. I love the South, but Southerners, man, are they tend to care more about liberty than they care about safety sometimes. So I think I think that's a big part of seeing people kind of revolt against it. And I don't know. To your question, Eddie, I don't think the media is lying to us. I think that the media is concentrated on a particular segment of the United States, which is bigger cities like a New York, like a Miami, even in Atlanta, and they're focusing in on how bad this can be. And I think the truth of the matter is, it can be really, really, really bad. Like it's not at that point yet. But I'm one of those people who believes every death matters, and we are in six figures in deaths, which that's scary, and I know people personally who have had family members who have passed, and I know people personally who have passed from this. So, it's hard for me to believe. I mean, I look at the stats in the county and they're like, it's 37 cases, 8 deaths. And I'm like, yo, we're good. Like we'll be all right. Until you're that one person in that 37, or your mom is that one person or whatever. So I think we definitely have to take precaution and pay attention to what could happen. Because this thing, it can be a lot worse than what we're seeing right now. And I think places like Georgia and even my own state, Florida, they're jumping back into things too early because they want things to roll and be normal again. And places like Florida, where the economy is based off of tourism, heavily, us taking 4 months away from Disney could be catastrophic, for a lot of people. I mean, us having the hotels closed for 4 months can destroy our city, so I think governing officials are trying to balance this thing of like, how safe can we be while continuing to generate our economy? So.
I saw Disneyland over here in California. They laid off furloughed 100,000 employees. 100,000.
Wow. 100,000.
100,000 people. That is crazy. But and that kind of begs the question of the media's, like, the media has to be able to tell the truth, right? And my issue with it all, I'm not trying to lead you on to get you to tell me the media is lying to us. I don't think they are. I don't know if they are. But what I do know is that their business survives when they get likes, comments, and views and clicks. And so they do have to, on some level. I just feel like every time I turn the news on, it's like the toll surges. Like the adjectives and the nouns that they are using to get people to click on stuff are ridiculous. I mean, just absolutely crazy. Surge? Like, what does a surge mean? Like 2, 4, 7? I just don't know about that.
Yeah.
I mean, when I think about surge, I think hundreds of thousands of people But when I hear surge and I go, oh, 17 people got coronavirus in Wichita, Kansas, I go, all right, okay. So I clicked on this for nothing, and I don't know. It just gets a little, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, man, but then you get cases like Georgia. I mean, I hate to pick on Georgia, but like in
But here
Georgia,
we go.
in Georgia, they're doing the least amount of testing, right? They have the least amount of regulations on what's going on right now, and their economy has been affected the least. Yet they are one of the first ones wanting to go back to normal. So if the and they can come and defend themselves by saying, hey, the numbers are down. We don't have people who are getting this virus, yet they're testing less people than anybody else is testing. So if you don't do the test, you're not going to get the numbers. If you don't have the numbers, then it's not going to hinder you from anything, right? So I don't know. It's kind of weird, man. Like I definitely understand what you're saying because, I mean, I can't open my phone without seeing COVID-19. But at the same time, like, I have literally seen, hospitals in this area and in other places refusing to test people, who are not dying.
Yeah.
So how are we supposed to know, what the numbers actually look like?
And that's true here too. I mean, they wouldn't, I mean, a family member of mine or a family member of a family member just by marriage, they wouldn't test them just because they weren't over a certain age, and they're only testing in specific categories. You got to be over a certain age or have certain symptoms or whatever to be able to test them. And so it's like, yeah, you're skewing it, but that does kind of weirdly beg the question. Like Los Angeles County just did a study where they just tested random people with antibody tests, and they feel like, what is it? The COVID presence is 55 times more prevalent than their numbers show, than their actual numbers show, saying that all these other people have it, but all these other people aren't either didn't know or hadn't got over it and are kind of like, so it almost is like, okay, if we tested, the numbers go up. It's almost like the effect of China, kind of how they shut down testing. All of a sudden, United States is like the epicenter, but we're just testing over here. So is it the epicenter, or are we just testing? So we're being honest with our numbers.
Yeah, man. It feels like Turkey is maybe the new epicenter, bro. It's going crazy in Turkey right now. Yeah.
Goodness gracious. So let's talk about something meaningful to our jobs. We're all over here like we're economics professors or whatever, and what is it called? Epidemiologists. For churches, like there's been a ton of changes. Obviously, we're all preaching in our living rooms or whatever. What's been the biggest change for you guys in your ministries, like as coming out of this? I mean, I've got a ton, but like, what's the biggest changes that are happening? And then I'd love to ask you, like, what about, like, what can we permanently change? But what do you think has been some of the bigger ones?
Yeah,
Scott.
Man, for me, the biggest changes are the obvious ones. I don't have to preach in my living room, praise God, but I preach in our sanctuary that we rent, the building we rent, with me and our worship guy, and we're the only two people in the whole place. So preaching to an empty room is like, it's just the worst. I mean, you guys know, I don't have to complain about it right here, but man, preaching to an empty room. And then second, I think, like, so our church was built for this in some sense, and that like our church really does function fundamentally through our missional families. And so we're kind of decentralized. It's not about a big gathering. So shutting down a big gathering doesn't kill a church like our church. However, doing relationships and only doing relationships via Zoom just has its negatives, has its effects, right? Like, we're all on screens already. Like maybe the majority of my people are already addicted to screens or have a screen problem before this. And then now I'm directing people to a screen to be shepherded and to be like, to find community. And some of that just doesn't feel right,
Yeah.
So there's some mess. Even in the solution, it feels like it's a little messy.
Byron?
Yeah, man. So I'm like a baby when it comes to church planting. So we launched in September. So we were like a good 6 months in whenever all of this kind of rolled down. And we were very much still in that just laying the foundation stage. The week before, or maybe 2 weeks before we had our last service, we had like doubled in size because of college students. And
Dang.
we were grateful, that those college students were there. And just getting excited about like establishing some new things for them, establishing groups, building up leaders, all of that type stuff. And then all of a sudden, bam, like it's kind of gone. And, we're still trying to keep tabs and develop things for them virtually, but it's just not the same. Then, like the week before we had 30 college students in this room right here. And, just being hype about that. And then now I'm like texting everybody and people are not texting back.
So you haven't been able to reach out to any of them and get in hold, like what's been
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we
texting them?
We have communication with most of them, like via text, via Zoom. We also have like group meetings and stuff like that for the college students.
Okay.
But having them be integrated into the groups that we already had, it's been a little bit of difficulty in that because they were just kind of getting their feet wet. So you're having them build relationships with people who they don't know via technology. So they didn't have that established before. And then the people who we did have, or we do have that we've had for quite some time, it's been challenging for them because we have a mixed bag of older people who struggle with technology. I mean, I met with a woman earlier today who she's literally going blind right now. So she's like, I haven't watched your sermon in 3 weeks. And I'm like, one, trying to like figure out how to care for her in this moment via my phone, right? Like, how do I like love her well, through this moment via my phone? And then two, like give her the things she needs to continue to grow in Christ as she's, somebody who just gave her life to Christ 5 months ago, right?
Yeah.
So
praise God.
It's been interesting just navigating that. And I took a little different approach, or we took a little different approach. We didn't start off like hitting strong like the week that we stopped services. We actually like slowed down a little bit and we gave people a break. And the only thing that I did was provided a message and did a devotional for people, sent that to them directly. And then over time, we've grown it into, we rolled out virtual groups in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
We're rolling out new stuff that'll come out this week and next week. And I think that just kind of served our people better because a lot of them are older and they're not used to spending, hours of time in front of a screen or hours of time in front of their phones. So it's been really, really interesting. And then there's always like this fear that comes in as a church planner, just being honest. And it's like, man, like we were barely like pulling people in, I'm exaggerating, but like, it's not like we were like, 10 to 1,000 in 6 months. Like we were on like the normal path, right, of growth.
What's crazy is, my church is, man, finally at 2 or 3, 4,000, and then it's dropped back to 100 people. So it's really tough. I wish you guys could have seen it. I wish you could have seen it. It was amazing.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, but like seriously, like chime in on this. Like I mean, maybe y'all don't have this fear. Maybe y'all are like more holy than me and just trust God more than me. But like, there's this small fear in me of just like, man, is this the thing that will like have people say, well, I can watch Transformation Church and Hillsong and all of these other churches on Sunday morning. Why am I going to spend my moments like investing in identity or really getting integrated in identity? And
right.
The Lord,
that's the problem. That's the hard part too, because there's almost like these two camps, or maybe there's three, but you're thinking about, you've got your people, your loyal people, the people that have been showing up every week, week in and week out, serving, all that thing, giving. And you've got to pastor these people on some level. And then you've had this kind of outer shell of folks that maybe popped in once, twice a month at the most, sometimes maybe even every other month, who kind of were hanging on the outskirts. And it's like, those are the people that are kind of falling off. But it's like, how do we spend most of our time trying to draw those people back in and then acquiring new people? Or do we spend a lot of time shepherding the flock we have? It feels like those two approaches feel very different. I don't know if you think that, but it feels like because you can kind of approach your sermon like a YouTube channel, which I'm not certain that's a terrible idea right now in a different way, in some respects. Or you can approach it like, you know what, we're just going to go faithful. We're going to go deep. We're going to do things just to make sure we maintain. I don't know which one of those is best right now.
Yeah.
We're just kind of throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, man. And I mean, like, some of that's strategy, some of that's technique, but I think the good news is that, like, as long as you're slinging the gospel and as you're going to stick to the gospel, if you're doing it with this YouTube channel bent, or if you're doing it and trying to be faithful to the, to the few that you got or whatever, like, the gospel cuts on both of those edges. And that's what I think is beautiful in this season, is that churches that aren't slinging the gospel, right? Like churches that have been doing the social thing, and churches that have been like just on the other end, maybe like just trying to do tradition and do what they always have done, but it doesn't have anything to do with the Bible and it's not preaching the gospel. Like, I think that could be one of the best things that comes out of COVID-19, is that
It's
people are
good.
like, man, I got nothing. I'm not getting anything from my church now, but I did see this church online and they've been preaching the gospel. They talk about Jesus and how he lived, he died, and he resurrected, and how that actually affects my day to day. And that's been encouraging me, So we had a family reach out to my wife yesterday. This just got me. This really obviously is a soapbox thing for me. I just went off right now. But she texted my wife and said, "Hey, I've been watching Harvest City service ever since it started, and they've been watching our videos. Our family's been doing these challenge videos every day on Facebook during the week, just to have fun and encourage people around us." And dude, like, she goes to, I won't throw anybody under the bus, but she goes to a church that is just tradition. They're not talking about the Bible. It's week in and week out. And I feel like she's been doing that for her whole life because it's what's expected of her by the people around her. But who did she choose to dial into? She chose to dial into something that preaches gospel truth that affects your life in the midst of a hard season when her life is like,
Mm-hmm.
kind of crumbling probably. And so I think that's the goal, man, is that no matter what our strategy, as long as we hang on to the gospel and we preach the gospel, people's lives are being changed in the midst of this. We've had people that were on the outskirts come back in just because they need Jesus more right now.
It's good.
We had one story of one of my best friends. She had been trying to get her best friend for the last 14 years to come to church with her. And that friend's husband, I think, is an atheist. And the last 2 weeks, they've been in on our virtual reunion, you know? Like,
Mm.
it's actually lowered the bar for her to enter into church. And so in doing so, my hope is that so many more people get exposed to the gospel in this season that maybe wouldn't have dawned the doors of a church building,
Yeah.
Right.
or even a school where you're renting, right? Or where your location as a church plant, man. But if we can just be faithful with the gospel, hopefully people get exposed to the good news of Jesus and their lives are changed.
We've seen that too, where we've had these kind of outside people that maybe wouldn't have come into a Sunday gathering, all of a sudden be willing to sit in front of a camera and watch. Like, we had some friends that we know don't go to church that we love, and approach us and say, "Hey, we want to, never been to church. Like, we want to check out what's going on online because we see you guys posted about it." And it's low bar for entry. You don't have to
Yeah.
get dressed up and come in. And for a non-believer, like, they're not interested in putting on like semi nice clothes and showing up. So they'll come and they'll watch and go, "That was interesting. I don't know if I agree with any of that. Like, can I talk about it?" Really? That's what I do for a living. Crazy. So now it's like
Yeah.
you get that opportunity to talk to them about it. What do you think, like, some of the changes that are happening in church, like which of these are going to stay permanent? Because some of this stuff feels like it's actually, maybe you don't know about any, but like some of this seems good. Here's my idea. And I don't know if we'll do this, but I'm just saying, like, thinking about this idea of church group gatherings on Zoom in San Francisco. San Francisco is such a busy city. It's so hard to get anybody to show up to anything because commute times and travel, and it's almost like impossible. There's so few Christians, it's impossible to have like neighborhood-based small groups because there's just so few people trying our
Yeah.
best. And it just, every church feels like it has this problem. What does it look like to do, and this is like sacrilegious, I guess, to like missional communities, but like, what would it be like to do, Jeff Vanderstone would turn over in his grave if he heard this, to do small groups like over Zoom, like a couple times a month, and then gather once or twice a month for meals together. And then you can still live your regular rhythms out like throughout the week. But like, we know that like our small group attendance just over Zoom has increased like almost double because everyone's there every
Yeah.
week. And I imagine if we were to do one gathering a month, that it would be well attended because there's still only one. And everyone's like, let's get together and eat.
Yeah. Our missional family attendance in the same way has gone through the roof, man. Like everybody's there every week because
Mm-hmm.
what are they doing? But part of, I mean, maybe this is different in Iowa City than San Francisco, but I feel like the reason that's true is because the optional things, you know, when you use that old illustration of like the jar and you put in like the rocks first and then the pebbles can fit and then the sand, right? I feel like
Mm-hmm.
people's lives are just filled up with the sand and they never even got the rocks in the jar, you know?
Mm,
And
yeah.
so, like in this sense, it's like somebody dumped the freaking jar out. It's empty at the beginning of COVID-19. There's nothing in the freaking jar. And so, like, hey, I'm actually showing up to a missional family. Like, this is one of the rocks in my jar. I need connection with people because I'm
Mm,
isolated in my house. I'm not connected to anybody right now. And
yeah.
so part of me wonders if the reason the attendance has gone up isn't because of the Zoom medium, bro, but it's because like people don't have all these other optional things going on. I'm not taking my kid to baseball practice 3 days a week. I'm not taking my daughter to piano lessons as much. You know, like all those kind of extra things are kind of being cut back. And so then the real relationships, like the relationships with people that actually will get to your heart and care about you and preach the gospel into your life, those ones have accelerated in the value in your life. And so you're like, man, I got to get this in, you know?
So maybe there's compounding variables there, and it's maybe not such a great medium. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But what we do know is people are isolated in their
Showing
houses; they
up.
can't leave, and so they're going to show up. And it might not be because Zoom's awesome, and then maybe when you go back to regular life. But part of me does think that this is also an opportunity for us to go, all right, Zoom actually does kind of work as a small group.
Yeah.
Maybe not permanently, but in some way, even if it was like, hey guys, tonight's a tough night at the house. Can we just Zoom meeting? You know,
Yeah. Some
or
people,
even leader meetings. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, some people need to go to Zoom meetings. Like some meetings definitely need to be in Zoom. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I mean, we could do that. I like your idea, man. And I want to steal that, man. If maybe we meet once a month and the rest of our meetings are via Zoom, or once a quarter, you know, and do like, you know, Scott
Mm-hmm.
says, have a reunion every quarter with our small group, and every other week we're meeting on Zoom. I think those are things that could be valuable. But I also think it's like regional too, like in a city like a New York, like a San Francisco, where there's more going on and the bar is so high to like get into these small groups or these missional families or whatever you call them. I think that makes sense. But then there's like parts of the country, maybe even like Iowa and definitely like in the South, where people like crave that. Like they want to, like the
Yeah.
biggest thing I'm hearing from everybody is like, they are like just depressed that they can't sit in somebody's living room or like
Yeah.
eat
Yeah.
somebody's terrible macaroni salad. Like that's a thing for a lot of people here. And
For real.
I do think this, on one end, like you're saying, it's opening up opportunities for people to think about how we can do community in a different way. But on
Mm-hmm.
the other end, I think it's making the people who did not appreciate community well appreciate it more. So that if we're able to get back to it, maybe it'll be a little bit sweeter. Maybe it'll be a little bit more purposeful. Maybe it'll be a little bit more valuable. So.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to like walk all over y'all parade and like be like all judgmental, but y'all, I don't feel like life change. Like I don't feel like the way that I can get a hold of a dude's shirt collar and I can be like, bro, you need to repent and believe the gospel. I don't believe I haven't seen that happen in a Zoom meeting the way that it can happen in my living room. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And so I think like I feel you, Eddie, in that like, man, if you got to commute 45 minutes to get to your group and you're working, 10, 12-hour days, like lowering the bar for entry in Zoom, I think there's some genius to that, right? Like for
Sure.
certain people in certain contexts, I think
Right.
you should lower the bar for them to get into it. And maybe you are sacrificing a little bit of what I'm talking about. But man, like, and again, like I only know what I know for me. But
Mm-hmm.
last night, don't tell anybody, but last night I had a friend parked down the street, so he wasn't parked at my house, and he walked up, and we were out on my Three Seasons room porch, and we smoked a cigar and we sipped on some bourbon for the
Shame
first
on
time
you.
in the coronavirus. And
Scott, be
bro,
part of. You need to
I
be part of
left
the
that
part.
2
You're part of
hours.
the.
I left that 2 hours feeling like that was the best thing I've done in the last 4 weeks, was get face to face with a friend and chop it up at a heart level. Yeah. It
So
was like, it was so different.
Not only are you hurting your lungs by smoking a cigar, you're also violating the 6-foot rule. Shame on you.
No, I sat 6 feet.
Donald
I
Trump.
sat 6 feet away from him, bro. He was 6 feet away.
Y'all didn't share the same cigar, did you?
No, definitely did not touch his cigar. But he did buy it for me for my birthday, which is dope.
In Iowa, do people share cigars a lot? Is that a thing?
Bro, I hope not. I sure hope not.
No, you're onto something. You're totally everything. I agree with you. So the thought process behind this for me is, okay, yeah, every context can be different. I know when I lived in Salt Lake, we did ministry. Our group lived within a few miles, and even if you lived far away, it wasn't that long of a drive anyway because there just wasn't very much traffic.
Yeah.
But we have this weird, bizarre phenomenon where we get like people go to their church in San Francisco on Sunday, like they'll go to some of the larger churches in the city, and then like they don't like the vibe, they'll call it, or whatever, of their small groups, and they'll just like cherry pick smaller, more relational churches, small groups, and then be a part of that church small group, and then go to like a Sunday church like every 2 or 3 months just to feel like a Sunday service, just to feel like they're giving back. And so there's like we get small group consumers in San Francisco. So I feel like also this actually helps eliminate some of that too, where we get people going, oh, I'm just like really like your small group, but I just really like to try it out. It's really great. And then we don't have that anymore, because so they can continue to go to the large church in the city.
What do y'all think about like the other changes that churches might have to, kind of bring about? Like, I mean, all of our preaching, well, I don't know if all of our preaching has changed. A lot of our preaching has changed. Scott's preaching hasn't changed at all. I watch.
Come on, bro. I'm coming straight at you.
Why hasn't it changed, Scott?
A lot of people's preaching has changed. And I mean, most definitely everybody is putting out way more content than what they ever put out. Like nobody is doing the same unless you're like one of these huge churches that's always been putting out content. So like, what do y'all think about those two things? Preaching, is that going to be a bigger deal, or content? Are you going to continue to put out online content or make content palatable so that it can be viewed online easily after all this stuff is over?
Yeah, man. I mean, my worship guy made me get one of those tripods to put my iPhone on so I could make me some pastoral videos right in my house. And I don't think that's going to end, man. Like I do think that some of that content is going to need to be ongoing. It's just, all it did was accelerate me to catch up, and be like, hey, this is a place where content's already being shared. Why not have it be gospel content that can like get to people's hearts? So I'm with you on that. And I think there is, I'm already tired of putting out like some of the content, but there's going to be some of it that hangs on, and some of it that you can see is valuable and it's affecting people's lives. And so that kind of content I think is going to continue. But man, I don't know. You really think that people are preaching different? Dude, I'm just bringing the heat every week right now, man. And it's harder because there's not a vibe in my church of people like amening it and stuff. But man, I mean, right back here on this shelf, I got Preachers and Preaching by Martin Lloyd-Jones, and that dude has the highest view of preaching I ever heard in my life. And I would beg to say I think he's right. So I don't think preaching's going anywhere, Doc.
Yeah. Well, okay. There's so much I have to respond to you about, but I don't know where to even start. I'm not going to start with Martin Lloyd-Jones, but no, I will. So Martin Lloyd-Jones. Well, first of all, yes, that book is my favorite book on preaching for sure. But Martin Lloyd-Jones was not in this context. We just can't know how you respond to what we're thinking.
It's true.
We can't. So no, I do love that book. Your original question, Byron, was how has preaching changed?
Well, not just preaching, but content. The amount
of
content.
Yeah. So with the content, right. So with the content, I suspect that, well, first and foremost, it's got to be done with excellence if it wants to be able to compete with the attention. And I think there has to be a level of, we've got to just take our Christian pastor nerd glasses off and just go, hey, people are only going to pay attention to things that they think is valuable for them. And we have to be okay with that. The same way we look at looking at adding parking to our gatherings, or look at having a good kids ministry, or having a decent worship leader, is because we want people to want to come. The same is true for content online. It's got to be filmed well. It's got to be done well. We've got to have something valuable to say. We can't just get up there and say whatever we want and think, well, it's the church. People should listen. So it's got to be good. Second, I think you're right, Byron. I think there does need to be some element of high quality secondary and tertiary content coming out from the church besides the gathering. Certainly, we've been getting by like putting out sermon clips. But if most people are seeing that online now, I think most of our like attendance is going up in that respect. I think other content will be super valuable, like going deep. Some pastors are doing like Q&As in the evenings on Zoom, secondary like 5 or 8 minute videos, kind of explaining other ideas. We're starting to post some of those. Some of that has to, I think, mobilizing yourself as some sort of content producing army, not for the sake of likes, comments, and views, but for engagement with your people. I think that's valuable. And I think people are going to be interested in it, but only if it's good, because we only watch good YouTube videos ourselves. We don't watch, at least most of us don't watch like really bad content if we can help it.
Yeah.
And Byron, I think you do a really good job. You work really hard at perfecting your craft with, camera, graphic design. I think that's what's necessary. And our churches, we have to get really good at outsourcing that sort of stuff if we can't do it ourselves. We've got to be able to figure that out, because this is one of the things I think is going to stick, is as we come out of this, we're all going to be better content creators. And these YouTubers, even though some of them are 16, are really good at it. And so we're going to have to just evolve with that.
Yeah. I don't see us ever being able to walk back and not have sermons posted online, or, like even if it's just sermon clips. Like, I think we are, I don't think you'll be able to put the toothpaste back in the tube on that one. So, and for Scott, like, a lot of people's preaching has changed, man. Like, a lot of people are like cutting their messages down and, all that stuff. And I'm kind of up in the air about that, because I've seen data on both sides. Like, I've seen data that says that, the most watched sermons are 30 minutes or more, or somewhere between 30 minutes and 50 minutes, even through this entire outbreak. Although it's limited data. But I also know that there are a lot of people who don't watch for 30 minutes, right? So like if you are looking for that person who's viewing online, do you make adjustments? Or if you're preaching for your people, do you just keep it regular like Scott's doing?
I think no, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Scott.
A couple of thoughts on that. So one of them is like, what purpose are people visiting like the internet for in that video, right? So like, if people want to come and hear the word of God preached, like, you best be bringing the word of God, and you best be bringing it like, and being faithful to that text. And so y'all know, like, even within FA, right? Like, I'm on the top end of in our guys, I'm in the top end of the timeline, and how long I'm going to give to that in a Sunday morning gathering. We got some guys that are preaching 25 minutes before COVID-19. I was preaching 45 or 50 minutes, and that's generous maybe sometimes, so I think like, if the purpose they're coming for is to hear the word of God preached, like, I think the stats are like probably showing that that's what people are looking for. But I got a friend that like runs social media, like for a big entity in our community. And we were putting out 5-minute videos, just like pastoral videos about the Psalms and about marriage and stuff on our Facebook channel. And he showed me the back end of it, man. And nobody's making it past 19 seconds on those videos. Like, so when you watch a video just on Facebook and you're sitting there going through your news feed, like, you're not going to sit and watch anything that's of sustenance. But I think it's different when people sit down on a Sunday morning. It's as if they plan to sit down and be at church. And I think they still want to hear the word of God brought to them in its fullness. I don't think they want a half a meal when they plan to sit down for a whole meal,
I got you. That makes sense.
No,
but some of our other content, I think, has to take into consideration what Eddie was saying, that like, there's better 5-minute content out there than what I was putting out before. people ain't going to watch my stuff if it's not good enough.
You don't think, you think a short sermon's half a meal?
Bro, that is a different day's conversation, but you know what I think.
No, it's not. It's
My
exactly right.
My granddad used to say sermonettes make Christianettes.
Man,
Okay,
that's what I'm talking about. I like what your granddad
define
said right
sermonette. Define sermonette. What is a sermonette? I'm serious. I need to know because my sermons have shrunk in length.
Yeah, mine have too. Mine have too. Like just being real. So
I mean, same here. So like, but my sermons have gone to. I mean, I already had outlined it this way. We were preaching through Colossians, but like I'm preaching 2 or 3 verses at a time right now in Colossians, and I'm doing that intentionally because I can cover that text in its fullness in 35 or 40 minutes. You know what I mean? Whereas when we were preaching through the Gospel of John and I was trying to hit 30, 40, whatever verses, like I can't do that justice in 35 minutes.
Okay, tell me what it, okay, define that. Define sermonette. Like, is it specifically on length?
No, I think it has to do with if you're cutting things short and you're not giving like the main point of scripture, or you know, in the text, like the validity that they deserve. And so if you're just giving people a cute illustration and tying it to some verse and you're calling that a sermon, that's a sermonette. But if you're preaching the word of God and you're digging into the word of God and you're trying to help people, you're explaining it to them, you're illustrating it to them, and you're helping them apply it to their lives, like that's a sermon. It doesn't matter how long it is to me. It's about what you're giving them, you know?
And sermonettes make Christianettes, right, Byron? So
yeah. Dude, that is genius. I'm going to start saying your granddad's saying.
I think sermonette, like, I think he used sermonette in terms of like slang for like just a short sermon that's not a homily, right? So like, I think you can do, well, I wouldn't say that people should be doing homilies right now to feed people on Sunday morning. You know, I think homilies have their place, right? But I think there's somewhere in the middle of a homily that is for a specific occasion and a sermon that's supposed to be delivered to uplift your people, point your people towards Jesus and preach the gospel clearly. And then that sermonette somewhere in the middle where you're probably sacrificing on either time or the gospel or exegesis, right? So like you're not bringing out something in the scripture. I think you're taking a loss on one of those. So I mean, I've heard some really bad sermonettes, but I've actually heard worse long sermons than I have.
Oh, amen.
Bad sermonettes. So,
well, okay, so, well, when I think about a sermonette, I think about like when I think about a sermonette, I've said it in a sermon. I've said the word sermonette, so that shows you how I feel about that. But
did you define it? Tell me how you defined it.
Short, pithy, generic messages with a topical word or like that describes it. So like hope. Today I'm going to bring a word to you from God on hope. And I think, oh my gosh, here we go. Or my favorite, courage. Like we're going to preach on courage just in general. I just go, you know what, dude? I read The Little Engine That Could, and honestly, that is a better message on courage than this sermon. I'm dead serious, like dead serious.
Yeah.
Or like fear, and then joy, and then we'll take a word like that, and then we prop it up with like really weak 2x4s of like from different verses, and then we go, this is what I am. But really, my whole purpose of this sermonette was to really get on stage to like either fill time because I didn't do my job well as a pastor, or because this is what some of the latest, greatest teachers are doing in my network. So I'm going to follow them with these like short messages because that's what they're doing and their churches are big. And I want my church to be big.
Man, big. Yeah. To kind of shift a little bit though, man, big churches are doing long messages, man. Like big churches are like 30 minutes or 50 minutes, like closer to 50
30 minutes.
Closer to 50. I mean, like I looked at a church today, like they had 84,000 views from Sunday to today or Monday when they posted it to today.
Is
and
this
53 minutes? So
what general tribe is this sermon, this church from? Be straight with me.
He wears Yeezys a lot.
Okay, so he's white or no? There's only one. Well, there's 2 black people that might wear Yeezys that I
Yeah,
think.
he's one of the 2.
Okay.
He's one of the 2, he says.
Okay. So,
Talented communicator,
okay.
but he
All right.
preached for 53 minutes.
No,
And
and they do. And they all kind of that sort of lane, the kind of the general evangelical, new age, cool. What do they call those dudes? There was a Vice article on these guys
I
called,
can't remember it.
they're called like the new prophets or something. Can you look that up real quick? Can one of y'all look that up? So these guys, they're into this, like they're the new age prophets, these young guys in their 30s that preach a long time. I think though, there's a couple, I think there's, every guy differs in that sphere, but some of them are walking around doing legit TED Talks and they're preaching a long time because they enjoy to talk and they enjoy to hype and they enjoy to encourage. And I don't think I don't think any of them are bad dudes, but I think they do genuinely, they do fall in that category of trying to encourage this Christian TED Talk sort of thing. And then they say things like, I'll get to the text. For those of you looking for the Bible, like, when's he coming to the Bible? It's like, I feel like when you add the Bible to minute 40 of your 57-minute sermon.
Oh, wow, man.
I feel like you're doing a disservice. But then at the same time, there's lots of people sitting in their seats. So you have to ask yourself, are they doing something right? Or are they attracting people for the wrong reasons?
Man, it sounds like itching ears to me. Sounds like they're just tickling itching ears, because I don't know what you're doing for 40 minutes if you ain't got to the Bible yet. You're not doing what a pastor's supposed to be doing, in my opinion.
Well, they're telling you that they're giving you anecdotes. They're telling you, they're bringing you around to the Proverbs or the Psalm, usually one of the 2 verses that helps articulate what they're trying to tell you.
And I'd be willing to say that they just present a compilation of sermonettes every Sunday, right?
That's a good word.
They have this overarching idea, but then they're just like throwing all of these little sermonettes and trying to pull them together under this overarching idea. Usually when you really sit back, there are a lot of like tweetable things, but there was nothing that like penetrates the heart. So
were you able to find that article?
I saw the article, but I didn't see like what they call
term.
It. Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't in Vice.
It's definitely Vice, because they're talking about like preachers and sneakers and Instagram and all that type of stuff.
It's something like that. Those guys. Shoot. All right. Well, I'll try to
circle back to what Byron was saying about it being like a compilation of sermonettes, right? Like one of the things that made me think was how, man, I think this is an old Donald Whitney quote, actually, how he would talk about meditation is like the bridge between like Bible reading and application in your life, right?
Yeah.
In a very similar way, I think in good preaching, illustration, which is like the anecdotes and the what we think of sometimes as the core of a sermonette, like I think illustrations are the bridge between explanation and application in people's lives, right? And so there it is, dude.
Yeah.
So I think like anecdotes like have their place as long as they're with the purpose of taking the word, the exegesis, and helping people to put it into practice in their lives. You know what I mean?
No. Agreed.
Here it is.
I mean, I think we agree. Look, when an influential pastor becomes an influencer, a new Instagram account tracking luxury clothes. So this is about what the prophets and watches, preachers and sneakers. Yeah. But then you can see kind of like this idea of pastor, how much this has shifted and changed.
Dude, our best friends around here.
And you can see there's the Beebs. Look at this right here. This is a guy eating French fries, and he's wearing, his bag is $2,000, which
Holy cow.
I mean, I'm not opposed to people buying stuff with their money, but that's probably not what but the point I'm looking at this all is to say, when you're preaching, you have to ask yourself the motive. The motive obviously is to help people. I think everyone probably starts mostly with the motive of that. But when they shift into this celebrity influencer mode, there is confounding variables. Do I want to attract people to me? Do I want to increase my value, my worth before these people for all things for the sake of the gospel? Or am I genuinely trying to help people? I don't know. We don't want to assume motives on anyone, right? But all we can do is assume motives on ourselves. But it's hard for me to know if this is helpful. Is this a good thing? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Man, dude. I think in some ways it's hard for me because if it comes down to helping people, we got to define how we're talking about helping people, because I
Exactly.
think in a good amount of times the word of God cuts at my heart more than it like pats me on the butt and gives me an arm on my shoulder,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the majority of people that fall into that influencer category are only going to preach in such a way that they're putting their hand on your shoulder and patting you on the butt, but they're not going to preach the word in a way that Peter preached it at Acts 2, and it cut to the heart at the Pentecost,
Good word.
and I think I don't know, man. In my experience, the word of God cuts a lot more often than it pats me on the butt.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I often wonder about that because, hey, we all know like these guys have hundreds of thousands of people like who are in their churches, and even more around the world who are watching. So there's something going on, right? Like there's something there. Is it what we should aspire to? I don't think
Mm-hmm.
so. But like I'm one of those people who feels like, hey, there's gold in there somewhere. So like, is there something we can learn from that approach to how you're dealing with the word, how you're illustrating things? I think Scott's point was great, emphasizing illustration. And I'll be honest with you, like I will never take much of what these guys are preaching, but some of these illustrations are good, right? So like, can
Dude,
I
yeah.
take and rope that into a gospel-centered sermon? Maybe that's
Good.
the one thing that I can do. So I don't know, man. I struggle. I won't say I struggle with that, but I think about that a lot because I've had people, even people in our own church that they'll watch us on Sunday or even come on a Sunday and then go and watch some of these other guys for hours,
Yeah.
at a time.
Yeah.
And my thing is like, man, hey, there might be some good things in these guys' sermons, but man, I'm your pastor. Like, and
Mhm.
my role is not like me preaching the me preaching the word is a huge part of my role, but it's not my only part, right?
Yeah.
And
Amen.
I'm gonna be able to like shepherd your heart, be in your life, disciple you in a way that this guy who is up on that platform will never be able to do
He
because he's
can't even do it for his own church.
yeah. So
Amen.
hey,
Well, maybe. I mean,
more
you never
power to
know.
those guys.
We
Love
don't
you
know.
guys.
No. They like again. We need those guys to succeed. When I read that Vice article, I read that, and I don't know. I've never really heard some of the guys preach. I have heard a lot of them. I do research. I love researching this kind of stuff. But the Carl Lentz's, Chad Veach, Rich Wilkerson, our boy in Oklahoma City. What's his name?
Mike Todd.
Mike Todd. We need those dudes to succeed because they're the ones in the spotlight. And so you've got like Vice and Esquire and all these these news outlets referring to them as like this new wave of evangelicalism, this new wave of Christianity. And it's like, if they have so much influence, we need them to succeed.
Yeah.
If they don't succeed, it ruins the opportunity for influence. So we want them to succeed. As I look at it though, I think, man, there is a lot here where while none of it seems like overtly sinful, it feels incredibly like there'd be a ton of temptation involved with the lives they live, with the amount of clothing, the travel, and then when you get to on Sunday with the sermons or the sermonettes, whatever, they could be long sermonettes, by the way. So they're up there, and it's like, okay, have they bitten the forbidden fruit? Are they now performing for this shell of who they want to be, or are they actually just leveraging their influence to be cool? I saw some sort of conference with a bunch of those dudes sitting, some other guys maybe sit. I don't remember who it was, sitting on the couches, and they're talking about like the leadership lessons. And I just feel like, me in my early 30s, I find it incredibly difficult to like sit and just give you guys my knowledge on my leadership. I feel like we need to take a better listening posture,
Mm-hmm.
at that age. I don't think we should be, because our church is large, just sitting over people and going, hey, this is what I've learned in my 6 years of leadership. And like for Mike Todd specifically, I remember him saying like, dude, I just started like a couple of years ago, so I don't really know. I feel like that's a good
That's a
posture to
great
take.
answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eddie, you said something great, man, and it kind of put me in a place because we do need those guys to succeed, and I mean, I pray for those guys, like, and not in a way that's like condescending, but like really pray for those guys, because that's a mental I wouldn't want. You know, like I don't know if I want 10,000 people in my church. Like I don't know if
Right.
like that's something that I would ever desire. But I will say that there are a lot of people who are in those churches who will have opportunities to grow in their walk with Christ, and they might grow past that type of church. Like, so I was that, like, I came to faith in a church that was very much like that mega church. And, you know, I listened to like a lot of those guys you named, like they helped me out early on.
Mm-hmm.
But as I grew and the Lord grew me, rather, I can't like despise that or like push that away or hide in a closet. I am, you know, of the idea or the thinking that that was just a step in where I was going as a Christian. So we will probably have people like that in all of our churches who came to faith in similar situations or with similar churches. And we will have the opportunity, hopefully by God's grace, to pour into their lives and help grow them as God is growing them. So it's just a different part of that process, I think.
So you're telling me God can use a sermonette?
God can use.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Scott, are you hearing this, Scott? Do you hear this blasphemy?
Bro, here's the deal. I would circle all the way back to what you said. Both of you said this, and y'all know I'm not like the dude that's just going to agree with everything. I don't know if we need those dudes to succeed at all. God can use whatever means he wants to use in order to get the gospel out. He's not needy for any of these brothers. You know what I mean? And so if they're not being faithful to the word of God, like, man, I don't know if we're needy for any of them. I think I would love for them to succeed, you know, for the sake of the gospel, if they're going to stick to it. But like, man, that's the thing, is God's not needy. And that's why it's a good business to be in what we're in, because God can use a piece of, you know, whatever, like me, and he can make good things happen from anybody. So yeah, he can use a sermonette. He can use this dude in the middle of Iowa that doesn't know anything to get the gospel out. He can use a sermonette. You know what I mean?
Damn, that's a good word. No, that's actually probably a better way to put it. Like God doesn't need them. It would be great if they did succeed, because it would be a great witness. I mean, they have influence to guys like Justin Bieber and like whoever else it is, Kyrie Irving, and that's just a really cool opportunity for influence. But I do know a lot of guys that have personally gone by the wayside in those sort of lanes, and I know them, and it just bugs me. I told you about the one story about the guy I was sitting with in Utah, and he kind of started that sort of church, and he just sat across from me. He was like, "Hey man, do you know any of the Utah Jazz, man?" And I'm like, "No, I don't. I know a couple of their trainers, whatever." And he's like, "Man, I have a dream one day of just sitting courtside with those guys, flying private with them, just fist bumping them, saying high five, and they're on the court and they hit a three and they're looking at me, man. They're like, 'Yeah, that's my pastor.'" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, I got you." And it just, first of all, that's hilarious that you could say that. But just to hear that, that's just the wrong motive. That's the wrong motive. Yeah. My goal for influence with this guy is to just to ride their coattails to their superstardom. Like, and they have sayings in their church, like for the famous and the faceless. And it just bifurcates between two types of people. Like, we've got the famous people, the Justin Biebers, and we've got the faceless, everybody else. And my goal is to be part of the famous and the faceless. But we do have special seating for the famous if they need it.
Yeah, man, I don't know about y'all, but when I look at the Gospels, I don't see Jesus hanging out with the famous people all too much. You know what I mean? I see Jesus hanging out with a whole lot of faceless people. And I don't know, when we talked about this, I think I took it home one time and I was talking to a friend about it. And he was like, "Bro, if you want to someday be like KD's pastor, you better start by being some middle school basketball player's pastor, you know, because if you don't learn how to like actually care for people like before they're famous, you're not going to care about a person when they are famous."
Yeah.
You know?
That's good. Well, not care for them properly, at least.
I mean, you'll care for them with all sorts of selfish motives, you know, but you're not gonna like pastor a kid that like is on the middle school basketball team because he's gonna make much of you. You're gonna pastor that kid on the middle school basketball team because you want to make much of Jesus in his life. You know?
Good word. Well, you want to. Most of these, and not most of them, but some of these guys do want to just siphon brand equity. and you leverage it. And what it does is it create, and I can't claim to know what the heart of any of those sort of pastors' motives are, regardless of what lane they are. But I do know that when you put out that sort of, if that's your MO on the stage and that's your MO on social media, and we're as pastors trying to be discernful and we still can't figure out where you're at, we know for sure that the people that casually go to your church are just going to become copycat versions and are going to fall by the wayside and become twice the sons of hell that they are. And as they get involved, they're going to be the ones that are now all of a sudden trying to siphon the brand equity of the high school player at their high school or the college player at their college. And they're going to become like this like jean jacket wearing hipster who's vacuous instead of like a deep disciple of Jesus. I'm using harsh language, but I mean, that's just where we're at.
Yeah. There's a lot of truth to that, man.
Byron, you don't like what I said, man?
No, it's cool. I think all of those guys, you know, they should humble themselves, come be a part of a church plant somewhere, maybe in California or Iowa or Daytona Beach, and sit under some leadership and be discipled well. And
come watch us fail, because we're going to fail a lot more than those guys are.
Bro, I fail on a regular basis. I'm real good at failing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, no, seriously. No, it's true, man. And even true to what you're saying, though, Scott, like, you're having this, if you're not discipling this kid when he's in middle school, that's when you do start. Because if all of a sudden you are shifting your desire to disciple them based on their occupation, then you're really no better than anybody else trying to disciple a professional athlete or movie star or musician, because that's what everybody else is doing. And pastors really do have a unique call to be different. We're not supposed to shift on somebody. And being a former professional athlete, if a pastor shifts on you, then you're just going to think you're going to lump him into the category with all those other people. But if your pastor always from day one was the same, and he tells you, hey, like, I'm not taking your tickets, but hey, I know a family that really could use those in my church. Like, I'll tell them about them right now. And they put it, you put the Kevin Durant's of the world in a weird spot where they're like, oh, okay. And you're telling the people to sit, amongst everybody else, and you're training your people to be able to handle their presence. That's why I think Hillsong has a separate, from what I hear, they have like a separate spot for celebrities, depending on which location you go to. But I think there is an element you need to train your people to be able to handle those sort of situations. And if you treat your pastors like superstars and celebrities, they're going to see celebrities and treat them like celebrities. So they do need to be trained where, hey, this dude's a regular guy. Let him sit in the pews and worship his Lord.
I mean, here's the deal, man. I can't be like high and mighty on this one because, like, in Iowa City, at the University of Iowa is like the center of our city. You know what I mean? If I could get Kirk Ferentz up in my church, the longest tenured football coach in the NCAA, that Kirk Ferentz. All right. If I could get him in my church, man, I wouldn't love to pastor him any more than any other person, but it would positively affect my church to have Kirk Ferentz there. You know what I mean? And I would not shy away from the positive effects on our church. However, I know y'all know who Dan Gable is. You probably don't even know who that is either. Like, dude's like the wrestling coach ever. Okay, best wrestling coach ever. He used to go to the church that I was at before we planted in Iowa City. And this dude had to like slip in church 10 minutes late and slip out of church 5 minutes early because people don't know how to deal with him. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, people would like man crush on him in the hallway, and people would like run over to him to try and touch his arm. You know what I mean? Like, weird stuff. And he shouldn't have to go through that just to worship his Lord, I think a lot of it's learning to pastor people and us not getting caught up in celebrity.
You just reminded me of something real quick, Byron, before you go. Do you guys watch Parks and Rec? You reminded me. Parks and Rec has it, like, they make fun of it, like Pawnee is like the birthplace of Larry Bird, and they had Larry Bird's aunt signing autographs one episode. 84-year-old Aunt Tilda Bird signing autographs.
Man alive.
Oh, sorry, brother. I'm just messing with
y'all don't have any love for Kirk Ferentz, man. He's cranking out NFL prospects like literally it's his job.
Sure he is.
Yeah.
third most in the Big Ten over the last decade, right there, coming from the University of Iowa.
Big Ten.
Sorry, man. I don't know.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, just to speak that a little bit, I've been in one church where there have been quite a few celebrities. I won't say quite a few, a handful of celebrities, and for most of them, it's kind of hard to pastor them, right? Because especially if they're in athletics, they're always going, they're always traveling, they're always doing a number of different things. So I think you have to learn, like, you know, you have to do the same thing you do with everybody else. It's like, okay, how much time can I actually dedicate to this person? And how can my relationship with them show the rest of the congregation how I'm going to interact, or how they should interact with this person? So, like, we had an NBA coach who went to a church that I was serving at, and he was almost never there. Like, so it would be wild if all of the pastors spent a good amount of time every week trying to contact him, trying to do all these things for him, or like treat him in a way that would kind of like puff him up, because you have 4,000 other people that you're like caring for and thinking about. Or you have like Grammy Award musicians who are there, but these people are coming, you know, to serve God and to love God, and they don't even want to be pushed to the forefront. So I think you have to like use just a great amount of wisdom and discernment to figure out how you're going to like operate, you know, in those people's lives and how you're going to serve them well. Because I'm like, just because you're like an NBA coach, I'm not going to like run after you to try to get you to join a small group. Like, I'm going to like give you the same announcement and the same push I'm giving everybody else.
And it's true. There is another layer of, you know, for people with unique jobs, politicians, athletes, musicians that are on the road, we do have to make space to be able to minister to people that can't necessarily operate within the rhythms of our church properly. Like even people like in military, like they have unique positions as well. So we've got to be able to still carve out and not be such a stickler. Like there was one church I was in a long time ago where it was a weird situation where I couldn't be in upper leadership when I was playing football because I needed to be there on Sundays. And there was Sundays, obviously, I couldn't be there. And so it was a situation where, you know, it's like, hey, this is the leadership's position. I respect it. I care about it. But I want to make sure that I want to make space in my church for people with unusual jobs. They can participate, still have a full participatory expression in the church. So how can I do that? So yeah, if they can't come to church, we do things like online. We got to be able to do things like that. But we've also got to create regular meeting rhythms where we can still meet. If you're on the road, it's digital. If you're not, it's in person. How are we still doing that? So we got to be creative in that too, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's cool to be creative for like, especially for like the low bar things. But I think you also have to be picky about like the high bar things, right? So, I mean, I'm speaking about your thing in particular. Like, you know, you can't be at upper leadership because you're not going to be there on Sundays. Like, I don't know if that's something that they should like push the bar on, right? Or move the bar on. I mean, I think there's concessions that can be made, but like if I had a guy, this is not about you, but like if I had a guy who, you know, looked like he could be an elder, but he could not make any elders meetings and we had to like rope him in virtually every time, that's going to also impede on like other things that elders are supposed to do. So like, should I like move the bar, or should I just say, hey, you're a great guy, you know, like I love how you're serving our church right now. I just don't know if you are right for eldership.
Yeah, that's gold, Byron. We got a dude that does like in our church that I think both of y'all met him actually, does like public speaking. He's like pretty prominent, you know, and he travels like, before COVID-19, he's traveling all the time. Right. And I had to have a conversation with him. I think one of the only things holding him back from being an elder is attendance, right? Like attendance, being a part of a meeting and a regular prayer and regular conversations that we're having and shepherding people, because attendance, even if it was virtual, attendance is hard for him at times because of the demand on his time in all these other cities. He's traveling all the time. And so, yeah, I do think there's certain things you don't cut back on. That doesn't mean he's not going to have just as big of an impact on our church in other ways, but certain roles you got to be present for.
You got to have capacity. I mean, right, we talked about the C's, right? Was it chemistry, competency, character, and capacity? You've got to have some ability to be present. It may be on an irregular basis, but it still needs to be sufficient And we've got to be okay with saying, hey, listen, if you can't make our Monday night elder meetings once a month, then it's over. Like, well, can we shift it to Tuesday? Yeah, but I'm not going to. So it's like, okay. So we've got to be flexible. But, you know, and maybe it's the older we get more stuck in our ways. And so we're less likely to be flexible. I like to think that won't happen to me, but I think most people probably think that. So we'll see if we get old and calloused.
Yeah,
man.
Hey,
Pray for
man.
me.
No, we'll make sure we pray for you, bro, and your guy. Parting shots, guys. Like, state of COVID. What about society? What stays the same after COVID that we've been trying? What probably goes back to normal? Any overall thoughts? I'll give you my quick one, so you get an idea. I went to Costco the other week, and it was my first time going to Costco. Costco, as you know, is maybe not for you in Iowa City, but
Get over it, bro.
I'm serious. I don't know. Like Costco's are crazy on like Saturdays and Sundays, like nuts. Yeah. So, okay. So it's the same.
Yeah.
Costco's are crazy, and they're terrible. Like, they're fun to go to, but when you get in, you're like, man, this is kind of stressful. The lines are super long. We had to stand outside of Costco before you get in with COVID, 6 feet apart. And they only let like 70 people in the Costco, or 170 people into Costco, whatever. And so the line wraps around the block, but it goes relatively quick, you know, and they let people in groups at a time. So when I got into the Costco, it was like this amazing experience. The line outside sucked, but once you get inside, it's like there's all this space. There's no one fighting over stuff. And then right when you get through, you go right to the front of the line and you check out. There's no lines. So I was thinking, what would it look like for Costco to just always do this? Instead of, like, why couldn't they create the same amount of people are going to come? They're just going to, instead of waiting in line when they have their stuff all cramped, they'll wait outside, and they could build like a theme park line style things where you've got shade, you can have drinks being passed out, put TVs up. It's a nice experience. What if Costco just did that all the time, and the people inside get a pleasant shopping experience? That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you disagree with that? That seems like a good idea, right? Even in Florida, air conditioned, lines outside, you know, misting you.
I think so. Man, oh, go ahead, Scott.
So my only reservation with your idea is, does it fit with the capitalism that we live within in our country, bro? Like, unless that becomes monetarily like helpful for them, I don't see anybody doing it.
Yeah. Why couldn't you? You could do this. You could shop from your phone in the line, and someone could be filling your cart for you when you get there. And then and they'll say, this is all the stuff you have in your cart. And then you could continue to shop for the rest of the stuff you wanted. It's things like that. You know, I'm just saying, like, maybe that's a little much, but like, you're right. People do have to want to wait in line, but if they're waiting in line inside or outside, it's the same. Right. And if there's no one inside, they would still walk in just like usual.
Yeah.
Do y'all have anything that you think, hey, like, what do you think changes? Man, that's a kind of a trivial one, but
I don't know if I have anything that I think will change. I have like a desire, like I have a hope that it'll be like the end of Bird Box, where like everybody's been shut in their homes and all these people, you know, unfortunately have passed. And then everybody like walks out of their house and like they're smelling the grass differently, and they're like interacting with each other differently. And, you know, people are appreciating life a little bit more. And I know that's like a kind of a cliche desire, but that's what I'm like desiring, that people will appreciate life in a completely different way. I mean, and I think we've seen it historically, like when the Spanish flu happens, like, and things start to kind of be back to normal, people show their appreciation for that. When World War I and II happens and they end, like, people start to show their appreciation. And yeah, it dies down after some time, but at least you have some sweet years where people are like dedicating themselves to the things that really matter. And in that, you know, as a pastor and a church planner, I'm praying that, you know, people's lives will be wrecked by Jesus Christ during this time, and that they will like jump head first into what it means to be a follower of Jesus. And, you know, the people who kind of like on the fringes and may not have understood the severity of what it means to make a decision to follow Jesus, so that you will have life that will last eternally. You know, now may possibly see it, and hopefully coming out of this, they will make that dedication, continue to walk with Jesus. So that's one thing that I'm kind of like looking to see happen. And then another thing is like, man, like you pointed to it with businesses, like businesses are really in a weird position where they're seeing how loyal their customers are. But they're also like having to make changes that they probably should have made years ago, so that people will continue to spend their money with them. And I think in the same way, like churches aren't businesses, but we have to go through that same thing where we're having to make adjustments to say like, hey, the way we bring on members does not make sense. Like, let's change some of these things, or the way that we put out online content doesn't make sense. Let's change some of these things so that we can see more people stick and be connected to our body.
Yeah, that's good.
What about you, Scott?
Man, I had a couple of things in my head. Y'all ever seen The Hunger Games? Did you ever read The Hunger Games back in the day?
I didn't read it, but I saw the movies.
Okay, so there's this scene in The Hunger Games when they go to the Capitol, and all the people in the Capitol are like they're the haves, right? They have everything, and they go to the castle, like the epicenter of the Capitol, and people are like eating food for the enjoyment of the food, and then they take this thing that makes them throw up, and and they like puke up the food, and then they go eat some more, like over and over and over again. Like you don't have to deal with the consequences of what you're consuming, right? Like you just get the enjoyment of the satisfaction of putting it in your mouth. And I'm kind of hoping, one of my prayers is that everybody being on screens all the time in this season kind of does what watching that did for me, right? Like I'm like, man, like there's something too. I just it turned me off to food a little bit, in that like I just need to eat food like for the satisfaction of my stomach, right? And like to get the nutrients out of it and those kind of things. Yeah, I want my food to taste good, but I got a little bit sickened by the idolatry of those people, right, when I watched it. And so I'm kind of hoping that we get close enough to the idol of like screens in our lives that people like it shakes people enough that they turn from Netflix binging as their favorite pastime, and they maybe just want to sit and have a meal with people and like have personal interactions on the back end of this, you know? So that's a hope, like Byron was saying. I don't know how much that's going to happen, but the real life thing that I think is going to stick in some way, shape, or form is what I was saying with that illustration of the jar with the rocks and the pebbles and the sand. And man, I hope that there's things we didn't talk about this. One of the things we said we maybe would talk about. I hope there's some of those pebbles in the sand that are like just gone, right? Like they don't have a place in our culture anymore. And people just get the essentials locked in, you know, like their family, their God, their, you know, like those kind of things, friends, like those things are really locked in and irreplaceable. And some of the things that were optional, we go without them for 4 weeks, 8 weeks, or 12 weeks, or however long this business lasts. And we're like, man, I can live without that, you know, because I've got the things that matter most to me. And so like sports, man, like, man, I love sports as much as the next guy. You heard me rattling off Kirk Ferentz's stat line already, you know? But after about 21 days, I stopped clicking on the ESPN app every 30 minutes. Like, I know they're not putting out any more news except for that new Jordan program that I got to watch like today.
Yeah.
But like,
I haven't seen it.
You know,
I gotta see it.
I haven't either. But the Red Sox are not playing every day. And so I'm not clicking on that app, and it's not hurting me at all. You know, it's making me a better person probably.
I have seen areas where myself and others, we've gotten a lot worse because of this, but there are areas like what you're talking about where we've gotten way better. And one of those is there's just less distraction, less things from our competing for our attention. And so that really has been a huge benefit to not have to go, man, like, did the Warriors lose again? Or, you know, whatever it is, right? Although the NFL draft is this week, and I am very excited. I should have had you guys do a mock draft with me, but I don't know if you would have participated in that. No? All right, Byron.
Dude, I mean,
no, I'm saying, yeah.
I would have got in on that. The thing you said about the Dubs, man, even that, like, if we come back now and they got Steph and Draymond and Clay healthy, and we're adding into the mix a draft pick, you know, like a high-end draft pick, I'm going to get just as excited about the Dubs when they come back. Don't you worry.
Now we're talking.
You're a Dubs fan?
Now we're
No,
talking.
I love good basketball, bro. I ain't no
Oh,
Dubs
like,
fan.
He
you
just
said
loves a
we.
winner. He loves champions. That's what he
Yeah.
loves. You know, here's the great thing about this season being canceled, which I think it might be. I hope it's not, but
Was
is
it the
that
Dubs are losing? Is that what you're gonna say?
the Warriors are going to be defending champs next year? You
Their
know, and
streak will still be alive.
or the streak of finals will still be alive. So there'll be 5 straight. And you know, but I hope it's not, man. I hope it doesn't come to that. But I get the sense that I think probably the NBA, unless they're figuring out a way to do it in a safe way, it feels like it's probably gone.
Yeah, it feels like it's gone, man.
Yeah.
All right, guys. It was good hanging with you. I appreciate you being on.
So good. Thanks for having us, man.